I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Good afternoon, and glad to see everybody here. Glad to be here. Good Monday. The whole country is buzzing right now. It seems to me about the uh, Oscars last night. So before I get to the serious business of education, I want to go around with my guests here to see if there are any impressions, thoughts about what we watched last night. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's worth talking about because, the question of entertainment, the question of civility, question of comedy, how caustic, it can be sometimes, and how people can, react as Will did last night. So, Dinah, what do you think? What was your feeling on watching that last night?
Like I said, I have mixed feelings. Like I said, sometimes everything ain't funny. You know what I mean? And you really need to know when to make certain comments and when not to make certain comments, especially given their past history, those two families.
Mm-hmm. Kerry Jo, what do you think?
Well, I think that if you're going to say a joke in bad taste for everyone to hear, you're going to have to take. I mean, I hated it that it was two black men, which I think is why, Will gave him an open hand as opposed to a fist,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some thought with that. But don't talk about my wife. Don't talk about my husband. And don't compare a movie to Appalachia. Did I say that correctly? Like that it's a disease. Like don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just felt like
It's called alopecia.
alopecia. Thank you, alopecia. Yep. I just felt like it's not the same. That was in bad taste.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Ann. Hey, Dee, and hey, Loretta. How are you? Good to see all of you. Dee, what are your thoughts? Any feelings, first impressions?
I didn't watch it, so I don't really know what was said. I did see on the news that one hit the other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what led up to it. Bad jokes are inappropriate. Striking someone else is inappropriate. So that's as much as I know.
What do you think, Ann?
I only saw it today on the news, but I think I saw the whole thing. I understand the feeling of being really angry that someone's insulted, your family person. I do understand that. But I think you have to kind of stop short at hitting somebody. I just do.
And Loretta, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Good morning. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. I don't know. I saw the aftermath. I was actually watching it and then I walked out of the room and I remember it got really quiet. So I thought, oh, did he say a swear word? And they did the 7-second thing. But
He
it was
did.
like,
He did. Yeah.
and then, but when I went back, it's like, it looked like Chris Rock was recovering from something. And then I was like, oh, and then when I saw on Facebook, it's like, oh my God, Will hit Chris, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what happened. All right. So I don't know. I feel like Will was in the right a little bit with that.
He was in the right or in the wrong?
And in the right, I think.
Okay.
To be honest, you insult. Yeah. I know if it was my family member, I would do the same thing, probably.
Okay. Well, listen, I think everybody's talking about it, and I think everybody has to take whatever instruction or learning or interpretation that she or he can take from it. At least it's kind of in the public domain, and hopefully it can resolve. Maybe there's some learning and some lessons that can come out not only for those two, but for everybody else that is in the conversation right now that is oriented towards healing and restoration. I think nobody wants anything ill, wishes any ill for either of those two brothers, nor for anybody else at the end of the day. And so hopefully good things will come. Well, let's move on and talk about education. Minneapolis has just announced yesterday, I believe, an end to the 15-day teacher strike. Students will be returning to school tomorrow. I think teachers are back in school today. And I wanted to focus on that and ask my panelists today, we're now joined by Marcia Howard as well. Hi, Marcia, to review what has happened over the past, 15 days, what your sense is of the outcome. And my question is always, how will all of this benefit the children, the students? And then how will it benefit their families and therefore the community? And with that being the baseline, the objective, the real objective, then how do we and have we moved towards recognizing the critical role that all of the parts play in delivering that quality learning and educating experience to children and for our families? Have the teachers and the classroom assistants found what they need in order to be more effective and to be respected and honored and compensated fairly? Has the district found what it needs in order to create an environment that supports not only the students that they are charged and the families, but the staff, the people that work, and has the union figured out that it has done the right thing by organizing and in a sense really pushing the entire community and the awareness of everyone, and finally arriving at an agreement. Let me go to Kerry Jo Felder first. Kerry, you're a union person, and talk about this from the union's point of view, if you would. Give us kind of what happened and why and where we are now. And you can direct this to other members on the panel as well.
You know what? I actually would like to come in last with that, because I took time out to just think of the strike as a whole and what it has meant. And I made a Facebook post about it. And so not right there being on the front lines, but what happens after the strike? What does that look like after the strike? After our educators have flexed their mighty muscles, right? But what it looks like after for our students and what it can look like going forward. And so I don't want to answer that question. I'll just kind of come back. Can I be the last one?
Okay, sure. Well, let me go to Loretta and Marcia first then. Loretta, good afternoon. And you are a teacher, I believe, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And
I'm a
you
special
were
ed
a
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were also an assistant earlier. So
Yeah, I started my career as a special education assistant or an ESP, actually at the school Marcia works at. So, and now I'm a special ed teacher at the elementary level. So I've seen both sides of this issue in the realm of pay, and that was part of my reasoning of voting yes to go on strike, was because I work with some fabulous SEAs and they're not being compensated for what they have to deal with on a daily basis. And I remember being in that position too. And I'm a single mom, and it's like, I love my job, but I wish I was paid more to do my job. And so that was one of the reasonings why I went on strike, was because I knew what it was like to be an ESP making only $24,000 a year, and no one can live on that. I mean, what the ESPs got is a start, and we can keep fighting so that they get the living wages and we can keep quality educators, especially educators of color. And our ESP, the folks in our ESP is almost mainly people of color. And so I think that's how you you recruit and retain people is can I make a living on this? And so, I think we put our foot in the door to get more, in my opinion.
Marcia, jump in if you would, just to, or Dee, were you going to say something?
Yeah, maybe this is a false equivalency, but we pay football players and movie stars millions of dollars to entertain us for what is a couple of hours at a time. Not saying that they don't work hard to get to where they are and maintain their skills, but still they entertain us for a couple of hours at a time. When we don't pay the teachers and support staff what they deserve, when they have our kids for 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for the bulk of the year, teachers are not just teachers. The support staff is not just support staff. They're referees, they're coaches, they're life coaches, they're psychologists, they're substitute parents. They don't go into the teacher's lounge at 3:00 every day when the kids go home and have a party, and they don't have a paid vacation over the summer. They have to work 2 or 3 jobs. They have to work over the summer to pay their bills. We don't value those people that have our kids for that amount of time as much as we should. And that's troubled me. I come from a family of educators. I trained as a teacher. I know how hard a job it is. Why do we value the entertainment more than the people that get us to where we are in life?
I think
Well,
that's
Marcia,
something.
go ahead.
I think that's something that we as a nation might need to delve into. But I think if you want to get more specific about the way it works in Minneapolis, I'll say this. I have been a teacher for 23 years and I make about $84,000 a year. I come from poor folks, so I don't mind saying how much I make out loud because I used to talk about how much I made in regards to I got a 75-cent raise. That's the kind of people I come from. And the reason that they keep us siloed and not talking about how much we get paid, when my first contract with Minneapolis in 1998 was $27,083. That was my first. I had almost a master's and a teaching license. I made $27,000, and I was able to buy this 4-bedroom house for $69,900 in South Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm saying these numbers is this: in 1998, as a teacher, I was making more than some grown woman I work with right now as an ESP. And the reason they do that is relative deprivation. They want me to feel good about my pay, even though I'm not getting paid what they getting paid in St. Paul. Because as long as I can look at sister girl over here and she making 24, that makes me feel like I'm doing well. They always keep somebody next to you doing worse than you in order for you to be okay with what they're giving you.
Or to keep you in line, right?
That's how they do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time historically, it's been 51 years since a strike. And I think this strike was even different. It was the first time that teachers and ESPs and adult educators were on the line and we were talking about our salary. We were talking about our pay. And so when we were saying that ain't right, that ain't right, that ain't right, and it was humbling some people who in the back of their mind, well, I have a master's degree and I grade papers and no. How you feel going into this building knowing you can't do your job without this person and they make it $20,000? How do you feel leaving this building and I go to the co-op and sister girl that I work with is behind the counter because she got 2-3 jobs? This cracked everything open, y'all. This cracked everything open. It cracked everything open about the way that this district has made people in Minneapolis feel about our twos and fews that we make compared to what somebody else makes, Even today, going back into work, ESPs, they kind of aight. Teachers, we sucked it up. We kind of aight. Adult educators with the same degree I got, they mad as hell. I never knew they weren't getting paid I never knew. I ain't know. I didn't know they weren't getting paid what we were getting paid.
Who was not getting paid?
Adult basic education teachers.
Okay.
Are not getting paid.
Are they getting paid the same as ESPs or not?
K-12 teachers get paid. Now, with all that being said, if you think about this strike as this foundation building action, what it's doing is letting the district know that the 20 years that it chose to spend gaslighting us into submission and telling us, we're failures. How did we go in 20 years from being the #1 educational system in the United States, neck and neck with Iowa? I'll give Iowa that. The #1 to every year from probably 2001 on, I walk in the summertime, then we sit down there in the auditorium and we get facts and statistics and all this stuff saying we're failures, abject failures. And I'm going to be honest, they would use kids of color as the thing to tell us that we weren't shit. I'm sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
They would say, look at these black kids, they're abject failures and it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, what happened 2 years ago? What happened last year? I teach IB. I'm rocking and rolling. My kids, wait, what? And then they would use facts like, look at Roosevelt. Y'all got a 60% graduation rate with black children. And I'm like, what do you mean? They enter Roosevelt in 9th grade and they don't matriculate. They don't graduate. Yeah, baby girl moved to Florida. Nope. If she came in 9th grade and didn't graduate at Roosevelt, that's a dropout. They've been cooking the books for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is why?
What's the answer? What's the answer to the question?
Well, I know what I know why. I know why.
Let's unpack it. Go ahead. I mean, let's say, what are they saying is the why, which you already said they're blaming both teachers and parents, and even blaming the children for them being bad people. But you're saying there's another why.
When there's blood in the street, buy lands. When there's blood in the street, buy land. How do you go and colonize something? How do you take it over? You go in, you throw bombs, you get everybody fighting, then you get the refugees leaving, and all you got left is the mineral and the mining and all their resources, and you take it over. They have been trying to undermine public education, I would say, in this city for about 18 years. If you've been in this city for the 18 years, the last 18 years, you have seen a systematic plot to decimate this to the point where families and even teachers will run screaming, and then they will say, come back, we got privatized charters for you, a la carte education for you, the Page Amendment for you. You see how horrible we've been? I'm like, we were number one. I moved to this state because we were number one. A Minnesota teacher could go anywhere in the country and they'd be like, please, please come. And we would get a license. Any person that came to Minnesota would have to go to school to get a license.
I mean, it's a big plot.
It's
a big game. And it's not only education, because like Marcia said, after the education there's land. And have you not seen everybody buying land from out of state? Like, they follow the charter school movement. That's why Eli Broad is friends with them.
Go ahead, Marcia. Is it Marcia or is it Marcia?
It's Marcia, like Brady.
Marcia. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So go ahead, Marcia. I mean, this is fascinating, number one. And my objective here is to create the space for you to be as clear as you can and to go as far as you want to go in presenting the truth as you understand it. And so I'm going to keep asking you to elevate, and I'm going to support you in doing that. You, Loretta, all of our panelists here.
I don't run none but my mouth, but I do run my mouth. And honestly, the work that I do at George Floyd Square is transgressive work that may put me at risk. But the stuff that I have to talk about as it relates to education in Minnesota, I think is the thing that's going to put my life at most risk, because this plot to take over education in Minnesota was the beginning of something for the powers that be. Minnesota is a proving ground. As Minnesota goes, the nation goes. And they play the long game. This has been long in the offing. Minnesota is the birthplace of public education, but it's also the birthplace of charter schools. And if they can, in 18 years, flip us on our head and convince us to give up public education, then there goes Illinois, and there goes Virginia, and there goes New York, and there goes Idaho, and there goes California.
was really doing what the people tried to do and did do in the South when integration was ordered by the court, when segregation was made illegal. And so the white people decided they would simply convert their buildings or create new buildings called academies. And they may have had to foot the bill for a year or two, but they worked to change legislative and funding cycles and relationships so that ultimately public money went to supporting their private systems.
No.
The private
Yep.
systems were back to segregation, the order of Jim Crow that had existed before. And they probably begrudgingly, allowed one or two, right, so that they could meet the minimum. But by and large, two separate education systems, and it's almost like a vampire scenario that drains the blood from one over a long period of time, not at one time, but tap the neck and keep dripping, and that drip empowers and grows another system. The other system supports the original concept of white supremacy. That's what I think. But how does that apply to the North, to Minnesota? Because on the one hand, we're being told that yes, teachers and public schools and public education has failed, and therefore, in our desire to create opportunity for young people, we can't leave anything, or any option off the table. And therefore, we have this movement, as you've described it, for privatization. And the danger of that always has been that it could be a death knell to the concept of public education. But we know, Black people, that public education has been the only way we got an education in this country. So what do you think, Marcia?
And y'all don't let me
correct me if I'm wrong.
This. Here's what's the tricky piece. What I've seen about the powers that be is the utilization of Black and brown kids as the sacred cow, the scapegoat, and the sacrificial lamb. They have used the specter of Black failure to browbeat educators for the last 20 years. And I'm talking about people of my loins. I've given birth. I've sent a Black child through Minneapolis public schools. So for y'all, and I mean y'all, to continue to say that our kids are uneducable, therefore get them out of the public schools and put them in privatized charters. You have to rely on anti-Blackness and this idea that there is something fundamentally wrong with the kids that we give birth to and send to public schools. Or you make the honest get on little Miss Becky from Anoka, who came in here like a white savior and thought she was about to do something. So now she feeling like crap. And the moms, what do you mean? What test score? What? Oh, and this test, and this test, and this test, and this test. They knew what they were doing, because then they did another thing. If access to Black teachers are one of the best indicators of how African-American kids are going to do, for instance, they did this tricky little thing because they couldn't do the argument that white women are messing up Black kids' lives if Black people were actually teaching them. So then they did this cute little thing called not letting Black teachers reach tenure.
Correct.
8 times more likely to get fired.
Correct.
Or if we were, we were the shiznit and we reached tenure, guess what they do the second you do? They offer you principalship or deanship.
Management.
So what they do, they kick you out the basement or shoot you through the attic. And I'm not trying to weaponize the idea of Black achievement is something that was part of a plot. There are many a vice principal or a dean or somebody at the Davis Center that earned a little spot. But you tell me why I've been at Roosevelt since 1998 and every brother that went through here is now a principal. Every single one. And I mean, after 3 years, I was like, I told one of them, a recent one, baby, you ain't even got your classroom management skills down. What you doing?
Mm-hmm.
He's a full-fledged principal now. After what, 3-4 years in the classroom. I got offered a principalship when I was at Franklin Middle School in 1999. Y'all, I started teaching in 1998.
1 year.
I started to, and y'all believe me, Pia Payne was my co-worker. They offered it to me, her, Yutana Bo Newborn. Yutana took them up on it. She was a Black math teacher. And she went through that program, and then she went back to Arkansas, where we're from, and became a good old principal. I ain't mad at her, but I told them I became a teacher to teach. I became a teacher to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, everybody like, where Marsha Howard come from? I've been in 111 for 23 years teaching English. I became a teacher to teach. But what they want is for the face of Minneapolis Public Schools to look like this, and the failure of Minneapolis Public Schools to look like some of y'all.
Mm-hmm.
But by claiming that Minneapolis Public Schools fails kids, what they are also playing at is that kids that look like me are funded. I don't know if it's lead poisoning or generational trauma. I really don't know, but something. I don't come from dumb people.
They're saying it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
I don't come from dumb people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. How is it that Black folks made gains and gains and gains and gains until 1992? I graduated in 91. They did the studies. In 92, the plot was afoot to segregate schools again. Since 1992. Let me hush, y'all.
No, this ends up being a master class. I'm enjoying it, and thank you for sharing. Loretta, you want to jump in? Impressions, thoughts, feelings, and then I'm going to Kerry Jo.
Yeah, I just with the charter school thing, I was also going to say too that like in New Orleans as well. Sorry, I'm at school actually. In New Orleans, it kind of the same thing happened. That like Hurricane Katrina is how the public school system was decimated in New Orleans. Was you had a natural disaster, and therefore, what a way! All the people who were in our public schools are now gone, and so we can do this whole new system, and just totally decimated the New Orleans public school system. And so that was a thought that came across my head too. And then Marsha kind of said it all, but yeah, I agree. Like like I said, I'm a special ed teacher. I teach in an EBD program, and the majority of kids who go through that are Black and Native and brown kids. And I it's like, and they'll do everything they can to keep those kids in that program. And my thing is, I think I truly believe kids can improve, but they don't give us much resources to help kids improve or help kids. And some kids are misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed as well. And so it like, to me, it's all about money too. Like the more seats you have in an education class, the more money you get. And so I think, they get mad at me. I exited a kid out of EBD and they were mad at me about that. And I'm like, but isn't that the point? If he doesn't need the services anymore, then why would I continue to make this kid suffer in special ed when they are successable in their general ed class? And so I feel like it's been for me that was what, like, the strike exposed a lot of stuff for me, stuff that I didn't even know. And it just showed the dysfunction of this school district and But I think says now it's like we have to demand that we have a say when they put out any initiatives or anything, that we have to have a say in that, and they just not shove it down our throats and hope we implement it or something, kind of like the CDD, like, right? It, for some people it was great, but for some it was horrible, and that's why
What
you
is
saw that
CDD?
mass exodus from.
What is CDD?
There's a lot of factors, but that's part of the reason why you saw that mass exodus this year from Minneapolis Public Schools.
2,400 students.
How many?
2,400.
Yeah.
So the CDD is a comprehensive district design, the baby of Eric Moore. There is not dysfunction in the district. There's calculated. I'm on TV. There's calculated. Everything that happened was supposed to happen in the way that it was supposed to happen. That feeling you get when things aren't working right, and you're like, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. That's called churn. They deliberately did this in order to make teachers leave, in order to make families leave, in order to make kids leave. Because again, there are people in Davis Center that were put there in order to cause this.
Yep.
Not everybody smiling at you is your friend.
Yep.
Not on the school board, not at Davis Center. No, not everybody smiling at you is your friend. They were here to take us out from the inside.
So the school system goes into default. What happens? Or will it come close to default? Is it a question of shrinking it or destroying it?
You got to see what they're doing to cause that churn. Prime example, somebody called somebody and said, oh my God, 200 students just left the district and went to Edina. That's $2 million. Number one, who can leave Minneapolis and go to Edina? But whatever. But number two, the fact that your first thought was how much money went with the kids. You know, the invisible backpack that every kid has of money. Who wants to capture those dollars? Nice little private school. Let us take your kids. Ooh, kids that would have been over north and then they would have been in Shingle Creek and now they're going to go to the suburbs. Come on back. We got a nice little privatized charter for you. They're doing it in tandem with the push for the Page Amendment. Alan Page, honorable Chief Justice, God help him, because his name is on the Page Amendment. And like I said, I'm gonna make some people mad. I think
let's go there. Let's explain the Page Amendment, what it says it's doing, what the consequence is as you see it. And I'm saying I'm hearing you ringing an alarm.
I'll say this. I'm going to wait. I have been between GFS, Northfield Square, and this strike. I have been running ragged. And I'm going to be very careful about what I say, when I say, and who I say it to.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to ring the alarm.
You go ahead.
Go ahead.
I mean, we just have to really take a look at what has been building up in Minneapolis. And I'm glad that I graduated also in 1991, because my sister started to catch the downside slope of different pieces. But up until that, and before we even come to that one, I want to go back even further, because coming out of the 1972 strike, teachers were involved in everything. They were involved in a lot. And in fact, that's how Sumatech got to be. That's how VPA got to be. That's how Colleen's dance program got to be, right? Like, we had all those pieces, and teachers were actually given power to implement what was good for their school, for their community school. And I believe in community schools as long as every child has access to everything other children have, as long as it's equal. And the CDD was actually brought forward by Jemez Staples, a brilliant young North Side man, right? And he was going to do that, and he had the building for it and everything. And what we saw here is, the $1 million that we've paid out to Castle over the years. Castle is a social emotional learning group that they have. The district didn't want to give him $300,000 a year to house the program and build it for students to attend. a Black man. And so then we tried with that, and Rebecca tried, and we all tried with that, Ira, but we couldn't get it through because they had a hard 5 over there. And so then I brought it back. Now I'm talking about the origination of the CDD came from a Black North Side man, right?
CDD again is what? Say it again.
Comprehensive District Design.
Okay.
So then I'm
trying to figure out how Jamez Staples is the author of CDD. Is that what you're saying, or am I getting it wrong?
Well, Jamez found there's a school in Rochester, CTech in Rochester, and that's where he got the idea from to bring it up here and implement it on the north side.
Okay.
And so then they didn't want to work with the Jamez, and that was done. So I went back down to Rochester and I grabbed the newly updated sheets and I brought it back, and I was like, let's just do this for North. Let's just do this for North, and we'll start implementing these pieces in there, because North really basically had all of these programs when I was going to it already. And so the superintendent was like, okay, well, we'll tear North down and rebuild it. Whoa, no, we're not, because I can't trust you as far as I can throw you. And so then they were talking about building a building on the other side. And at this time, I'm going through the neighborhood, having meetings, talking to parents, like, what do you want to see? What do you want to have? And coming back to find out that, okay, now they're not going to have it just at North. I mean, we've sat down, we've had meetings, what do you want first? And going back and forth with the community. And then they took it and they just tore it apart. And what that's telling me is that the people who we have voted for to put on the school board cannot tell what equity nor equality is. They cannot. And so they voted to twist it apart. And that's what became the CDD as we see it now. And not only that, you talked about the vampire. Well, the blood sucking is from the north side. The blood sucking is our Black and brown kids on the north side. And so then when we start to run out of money, we send more. We give them IEPs and 504s, because that generates more money. So then they can keep sucking, right? And the CDD even goes as far as to take lines from South Minneapolis and North Minneapolis and encroach upon the north side to take students out as far as the CDD is concerned already. Not that the North Siders are choosing to go south and northeast, but it just comes and takes them anyway. So, and that is the vampire piece. So then we're taking them out, right? So, a kid going to Southwest and coming back to North Minneapolis is going to look around and say, oh, my stuff ain't stuff, right? My stuff ain't stuff. And it might give them a different view of how they treat their neighborhood and do those pieces. The CDD, even at some point, I was like, you guys can't do that. You guys are going to take kids from the lows and put them in with the highs. I was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Well, what are you talking about? We've got gangs over here. You can't do that. But so they moved it back. And then later they moved it back out again because they don't care. This is just a whole plot to weaken Minneapolis public schools, to weaken our community, which it has done, to drive out, Black and brown families, home ownership, right? I mean, when we saw the Department of Health started to go down with how many housing pieces that they had, how many housing issues that they had, they were like 10,000 units short. That's 10,000 families short. And, what percentage of those families had kids and what ethnicity were they? They've been being pushed out to other areas, Farmington, St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie. And so, yeah, it really has shook up Minneapolis as it is. And who's going to afford it? I don't know. I can't afford $1,100 studio down on Broadway in Penn. Right? The liquor store is right below. Don't forget that.
Diana and Dee, jump in. What are your concerns, observations, number one, and concerns, and your perspective on this quagmire? Anne, go to you first.
Sure. Most of you probably don't know me, but I work for the Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board. And our job is to bring together the city, the county, the parks, and the schools to work on behalf of children and young people in the city. We work on a whole bunch of levels. And so my board is made up of elected officials from all those jurisdictions. And the thing I think about the most and the thing that frustrates me the most is my thought is always about what's going to be best for the kids. How do we center our decision-making in what's best for children and young people? And I just don't see it happen very often. It's usually around the money. It's usually around how can we keep this institution going. It's usually around what's more comfortable for the adults in the room. But it's not usually around what's going to be best for kids. And this conversation just reminds me how far away we are from that. So I am really concerned about our children. I've been concerned about them since I came to this job, which has been 13 years. We've done some things, tried to do some other things. We work a lot in the area of after school. So we work hard to get funding for kids to have things to do after school. And we've gotten some of that this year, but it's not sustainable. It's short-term COVID funding. We know that kids do better when they have places to go, things to do, other kids to see, when parents feel secure that their kids are being cared for, when they're not able to care for them, they're at work, for example. And so we work a lot in that area, in the area of early childhood, to make sure that all the people who take care of kids, even if it's grandma, get respect and get assistance and help to make sure that they can do that. So I just think about the kids here, and without even making a comment on the strike, I just don't think it was good for our children. It just wasn't good for them. Hopefully in the long run, some of the decisions that got made will be, but at the time, it's very hard on our kids. It's very stressful for them. I'm very proud of our youth work professionals in Minneapolis. By the way, a lot of our nonprofits came forward and did things for kids that they didn't do before, some things that they didn't have money for, but they just stepped in and did what they could do. And I'm really proud of them. I think they deserve a lot of credit, but I am concerned for them. And I'm concerned that we keep forgetting to put them in the center. We just don't do that.
Diana, what are your thoughts?
You know, as a parent, as a grandmother, as a person out in the community, I am concerned. I ditto what Anne's saying, because I have some grandkids that were going to school and some grandkids that weren't going to school, and they were asking one another, well, you know, you don't have school, so why is it that you don't have school? And that's not fair. You know, why can't I stay home? So, you know, that's stressful on our kids right there. And I have a son that works in several schools, and you know, he's banging his head. So yeah, I got some real concerns.
Yeah, I have kids at the school. I have one at Franklin and one at North. And so I'm a Teamster, but I work in an area where, you know, we support all of the unions, right? So I've seen everybody, you know, go on strike or do a picket, informational picket or whatever the case is. And I do have to say that there's no good time to strike. For teachers, and there's no good time to strike for nurses. And a lot of times these are groups that get pushed over a lot to the breaking point because they're made up of women who are nurturers, and they don't want to leave their kids, just like nurses don't want to leave their patients. There isn't a good time for a strike. And so, I mean, we were hemorrhaging kids, were hemorrhaging, you know, keeping workers. We had to pay bonuses for some ESPs to stay in some schools, right? We're hemorrhaging. We didn't have bus drivers. When I was on the board, we had a lot of cold days. You want to know why? Because I know kids are going to the bus stop, not wearing socks, in their boots, right, and the bus isn't going to come because we didn't have bus drivers. right? And so this is a breaking point. And so I feel bad that it has to be, when someone's kid or grandchild or whatever was in school, mine too. But the thing is that hopefully, like the last strike, then what's going to come out of it is going to be more beneficial for the students because the teachers are going to have more control. When we were number one, teachers were there picking curriculum. When we were number one, teachers were there deciding programming. When we were number one, right? They were right there at the table. When they do their negotiating, it's teachers against lawyers.
Mhm.
Like, that's not even right. Like, bring yourself to the table. Like, make yourself human enough to come to the table to hear these issues that are going on with the kids. That is completely unfair and it's bull guarding. And again, it's another waste of money by the district.
Let me
You
throw this
hired
out,
people to do that.
Kerry.
Thank
Let me
you.
throw this out because over the several weeks, I've had different panels talking about education, particularly the people out of St. Paul, and how they were able to close their negotiation to avert a strike. And I had on people like Bill English, my friend Bill English, who talked about and in support of the Page Amendment, but he also talked about the LIFO, last in, first out, as a process and a system that Minneapolis, and I think he laid it at the doorstep of the unions. Maybe I'm wrong, but so the question is, you've got this is like a three-legged stool, right? The administration, and you have the unions in their particular specific role on behalf of their members, and you have the teachers, and then there's a fourth element, that's the students, right? And so at what point in time they question, does organized labor support the workers' interest and comfort over the educational mission of the students and families? And that's probably an unfair way to put the question because it doesn't account for the role of management in that entire process of it's as if they're neutral and they're not, And so then the other side is for teachers and ESPs. Loretta talked about this gap, $25,000, 23, you can't live on that, and that was addressed in part. But does the system of ESPs, which you've described as an essential way to bring Black and brown bodies in the classroom, is that a two-tiered system where just the teachers, Marcia, you called them Becky from Crystal, I think you said, or Becky from somewhere.
And I'm
right?
only using that phrase because I actually wrote a piece and it was called Becky from Anoka, and it's this fictional young
But the
woman.
sentiment is there. It's a great characterization, and it's not a demeaning. You're sort
It's
of
not.
describing
No,
the
not at all.
situation. It's not throwing shade, but it's
Not
saying,
at all.
here's how it comes up, where you have these people that have a right to be there, that want to be there, but at the same time, how does that impact what we know about what is best for Black and brown children? And that is the presence of Black and brown teachers. And is there a process that either encourages or diminishes? And does LIFO prevent the growth of Black and brown teachers in the system? Go ahead, Marcia.
I teach communication, and one of the things that we talk about is logical fallacy. And one of the things that the powers that be are about to be real mad is that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be real mad that I'm right here. And this is why. Because what I recognize is that there are people who come at LIFO, last in, first out, or come at seniority because they want to demean or diminish our union. I'm all for seniority. I'm Black and I work my ass off to be 23 years in as a veteran. Give me every dime, every benefit that I deserve. And you know what? If it's 4 people below me and they need to cut, they're going to cut them before me because I done earned it. I got seniority here. I'm a retired Marine. I had seniority there. That's how they work. That's number one. But the second part of that is this. It's this false dichotomy or false equivalency of there aren't enough Black and brown teachers because it's all these old white teachers they don't let us get seniority. They fire us. They don't let us get seniority. They promote us to admin. They've been doing this for 20 years. So now they making seniority this little thing that they dangling over here like that's the problem. It ain't. It's 77 tenured Black teachers in the entire district. They fire us. Or here's the cute little thing. Y'all know Minneapolis waits 6 weeks after everybody hired before they hire, right? Anybody who's from a marginalized community that jumps out of University of Minnesota and is looking for a job teaching is not going to wait 6 extra weeks for Minneapolis to come a courting. They do it on purpose. Y'all need to understand what the plan is. They don't want Black teachers. They don't want Black teachers. So they've done all these tiny little things. If it don't make sense, y'all, it makes perfect sense. Why do they wait 6 weeks after Bloomington, after Anoka, after Lakeville? Why they wait 6 weeks after everybody else hires to hire? And that's brand new. Y'all, I got hired before I got my license. 1998. I got hired before my license was, the ink was dry. They just started doing this, and I say just, about 15 years ago. Hiring 6 weeks later. They don't want Black teachers.
Who was superintendent when you started, Marcia?
Child, I've been going through so many. I can't even remember.
Was Carol Johnson? You were not here when Richard.
I was there with Carol. Yeah.
Richard Green.
I was there with Richard.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, was John Davis first, then Richard.
Somebody was an interim, and
then Carol, and then they had Hutchinson and his financial group. And I think the time when Hutchinson came in with the idea and the philosophy that business knows how to run education, and that education should be pretty much it should clarify the role of education to get people to work for the corporate world or the workplace in a way that sort of shifted the idea of a general education for functioning in the world. I mean, the principle at first I thought was we're going to develop scholarship learners that learn how to navigate, and they, as part of that, can develop strategies and pathways to, technology or technical or trades or corporate, whatever. But that emphasis on the general broad education seemed to give way under this management decision that Peter Hutchinson, I think his name was, represented, that shifted everything. And then we've had a series of superintendents after that, all dealing with the decline and and at the same time, the rise of the charter movement. So am I right or wrong? Go ahead, Marcia.
I believe you're right. But again, zoom out. What does America need? We're in a consumerist country. What does America need? We need workers.
Mm-hmm.
You need demoralized workers with low expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And they've just spent the last 18 years creating that. Y'all remember when the MBST, the Minnesota Basic Standards Test, came out around 01, 02, 03, all it in? There were kids who were absolutely competent students who wound up not knowing they were getting graded by a college student, being told that they were abject failures. I had kids who couldn't graduate. They had all their credits, did all the after school stuff, and wouldn't be able to graduate because they couldn't pass the MBST. This objectively graded. They had to leave and go to Wisconsin to finish up their senior year. Y'all, I don't know, fit me for a tinfoil hat, but I've been watching. Somebody goes, you might have an incredible book. No, it's not about a book. It's about watching public education be systematically undermined for profit.
So fast forward.
And I think that the groups that come forward about LIFO, like it's easy for them to attach that than to come forward for some reason about the institutionalized racism that exists, like all the way down from the district on out. And
America.
yeah, I mean, it was just easier for that. And then also that they set our teachers of color up for failure. Ed especially did that when he came in. We had 23 par mentors, and he cut them down to 9, and only one of them was Black. Now, these par mentors, they might have been, younger, right? They might not have been able to handle the classroom, so they became, these certain positions. But I think if you can't be in the classroom, if you can't handle the classroom, then you shouldn't be out there grading someone else upon how they're doing their classroom. My sister, I hope she doesn't get mad because I'm talking about her, but her whole dream, she graduated from Sumatech. When she came to Minneapolis Public Schools, she had 3 of the 4 science requirements for graduation. She now has 4, right? And they let her go. She didn't get a par mentor until her 3rd and final year because they were so stretched. And by then it's kind of too late. And I mean, that just broke her heart because her whole dream was to come back and teach the Minneapolis Public Schools, to where she went. And there's a lot of teachers who had that dream and was turned around to go someplace else.
Marcia, let me close the program with what I'm calling marching orders for our community. And I'm saying that acknowledging that I so appreciate your analysis and the clarity and the strength in your voice and your vision. So take us forward, lay out 2 paths for us in a brief scenario. If we do this, this is what we'll get. But if we do right, here's what will happen. What does that mean to you? What are the paths?
I believe that if we keep our eyes closed and continue to accept the trajectory that those in power have laid out for us, what we're going to get is the dismantling of public education, the demoralization of teaching as a profession, and the students being gaslit into thinking that they're uneducable. That's a framing of their existence as people that are a problem. And you should not have young people thinking that they are a problem to be solved.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But if we continue down the path that we are laying the bricks down now, right? We're just now forging this path where we as communities and families and educators are being open and honest with the fact that our power is a collective power. It's about us being open and honest with each other about the path we want to lay, about welcoming Black and brown families back into the district, because not only are they running them out of the schools, they're running them out of the city of Minneapolis. They're trying to create another San Francisco or another Paris where all the brown and Black people live in the suburbs and have to take the D line all the way to work at Mall of America, and they're leaving the city of lakes to white folk. Cut them off at the path and say, this stops here. This stops here. And the way that stops is that teachers live into what we say we are doing. We're being called for these kids, for our communities, and for our colleagues. Public education is for a common good. It is one of the last bastions of meritocratizing institutions in the United States. We ain't got free college. We ain't got free healthcare. We ain't got free dental like every other Western nation. But we got free public schools, and I'm going to protect it to my last breath.
We're going to close it there. Thank you so much, Marcia Howard, Ann DeGroot, Loretta Van Pelt. Is that it? Van Phillips. No, Van Pelt.
Van Pelt.
Okay, great. D. Phillips, Kerry Jo Felder, my friend, Diana, my colleague. Thank you all for being here. What a wonderful conversation. Keep up the good work. I call this being relentless, and now is the time. I think victory is both inevitable and imminent. Don't stop. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.